Grand Rising Soul family. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. Brothers and sisters, it's time to let go of the past, connect with the present, and expand the future. That is a quote from our guest today, Diego Perez, aka Young Pueblo, coming back. He's making his pilgrimage to the Sacred Sons podcast for the third time, 3 years in a row. Let's go.
Thank you so much, my brother. Honestly, it feels like coming home. Like whenever I'm talking to you or to Abe or to one of the guys, it's just like it gets me back into that space where everything was just starting off in like 2014, you know?
It does. It brings me back to those early days when Instagram was like this really cool frontier to explore, and your friends' posts actually showed up in your feed back in those days.
Exactly. And it was also the time when all of our all of our ventures were just ideas. You know, like nobody had put anything out, nobody had made a new organization. It was just, you know, oh, I think this might be something that the world needs, so let me take a shot at it.
Yeah. You know, I wanted to ask you about this because I feel like you actually are one of the early adopters of these text posts, quote posts. And since then, I've seen so many people adopt it. And even in the age of reels, you're still withstanding the test of time.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how for how long. I think of myself as a second generation Instagram writer. Like I sort of see RM Drake, Bu Taplin, Rupi Kaur as that like first generation. And like so much respect to them because they were the ones that I saw you know, when I first got on IG, and I was like, oh, that's like I love the beautiful poetry in the image. And then I thought, okay, well, I have my own message. You know, I wanted to write about healing, to write about growth. And I thought, you know, let me see if this format works for me too.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's interesting for me because you write under the pen name Young Pueblo, and your posts, we've talked about it before. It's just white background, black text, all lowercase. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful, elegant. And does having a pen name give you some extra sense, or did it at one time give you an extra sense of confidence to really share your thoughts, to really share your relational wisdom?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, because especially then when I like first started, you know, writing, I was really just sharing with like friends and family. So I felt like the Young Pueblo name just gave me a little more courage to just put my heart out there and say, okay, these are, you know, these are the things that I've been learning lately. This is, you know, my sort of my view on old topics, right? Because anyone can write about any particular topic. What makes it special is that they bring their own perspective to it. And I felt, I think in the beginning it was really daunting. And it was funny, right? Like I say, second generation, like Instagram writer, where like that first generation may have lasted for like a year, right? Like it's like people who did it first and then like the next wave after that. So these time periods are really short. And it reminds me too, you know, I actually met someone who worked for Instagram in the early days before Facebook bought it. And he said that he and everyone on the team, like they were shocked because they never ever thought that Instagram was going to become a platform for words as well. And they never saw that coming, never had planned it, and never expected how it would ripple out into the publishing industry and just like, you know, change things drastically on a lot of levels.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I would also say, add to the perspective, it's the consistency. I mean, you've been in this for years, contributing to it, but that is interesting. Like utilizing technology to promote more healing. I think that's the real beauty of this age. There's a lot of downside. You know, people have exhausted, you know, the downsides of it, but you're really bringing through light, and you're really connecting to people.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I always kind of lean back on what Jiddu Krishnamurti says, and he has written about how people think that they're different,
Yeah.
and but really we struggle with the same emotions. Like I feel sadness, you feel sadness, I feel fear, you feel fear, and et cetera and so forth. And it's of course, like we have very different emotional histories, and we have very different sort of trauma points or different things that we've struggled with. But the reality is that we're feeling the same emotions at different intensities. So when
Yeah.
we put something out there and we share, one of our viewpoints, it's bound to connect with a number of other people because, people are living life just like you.
Yeah. And so, last time I put you on blast saying Kim Kardashian shared your post. But yes, everyone can resonate, but not everybody is being shared as widely and as broadly as like some of your most intimate thoughts. Um, and at at Sacred Sons, we say the age of the guru is over.
Oh,
The time
totally.
of the guru. It's about connection. So it's not that. It's really about. I feel like it's an art form. It's
It
it's a
totally
it's a
is.
real art form.
It totally is. And it feels like, and it's interesting, even with friends that I've made over time who are also writers, because there's also been that sort of popular wave of therapists who've become famous on Instagram. Like even
Yes.
them, like people don't really see themselves as individuals that have all the answers. They
Yes.
more so see themselves as, this is just another perspective that I'm sharing. This may or may not connect with you, but this is what's on my heart right now. So I want to put it out there. And I feel like that's so much healthier than how it used to be. Like even in the, 70s and 80s, and everyone's looking for like one particular teacher and that gurudom, it's to me, like personally for me, I always want to position myself as a student. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm quite careful with that as best as I can because I can't control other people's perceptions of me. But as things have grown, as things have gotten more popular, my wife and I decided to move to the middle of nowhere, Massachusetts, and just like, reconnect with the land and just be around people who like who are also serious meditators. And
Mm,
it's been good, trying to develop a community, um, because it's beautiful sort of connecting with the audience when I go to events and all that. But sometimes there are dynamics that I notice, that I think are a bit unhealthy because I don't want anybody sort of putting me on a pedestal and then putting themselves not on a
yeah.
pedestal, and kind
Yeah.
of.
Say more about that. What rings as unhealthy in those exchanges?
I bet you find the same sort of situation in Sacred Sons circles as well, like in the gatherings and whatnot, because it's one thing to hold a container, but it's another thing to, have other people look up to you as if you are a guru, as if
Right.
you are some like special teacher. But the reality is like, no, wait, like I could not, we could not be more regular. We could not be more like, we make mistakes. We're working on our own sort of different healing journeys. And I think I'm quite cautious and intentional about when I do go out to events that I try to hold myself as a student because
Yeah.
yes, I'm sharing things and yes, they become popular, but that's just another temporary situation, right? Like right now, yes, there's a lot of attention going to my writing, but I don't know if it's always going to be like that. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, to me, like I really want to be careful with my ego, right? Like if my ego is growing, then I'm limiting my freedom.
Yeah. And in Sacred Sons work, we get um, the honor of leading with the fact that we also have shadows. We call it shadows out front.
Yeah.
And so we have the leadership speak to the trials and tribulations and struggles and challenges that they're facing right off the bat to kind of
Mm.
squash that energy, because it is present. And um, it's important to acknowledge that it's not about perfection.
Right.
It's
Right.
in our work or in your work, it's not about perfection, it's about connection, right? And so, and that's where the real magic is. Yet yet those projections may still be there.
Yeah, and I think that's what immediately came to mind, right? Is that the ego loves to build hierarchies. So that's why I'm glad that, when you do your work, you name it. You're like, look, like we're here holding this space, but there's nothing perfect about us. We're still on the journey just like you.
Yeah.
And similarly, I try to maintain that student mentality internally and externally. But at the end of the day, the ego is going to do what it does. And because it's so sort of set in this survival mode, part of that survival mode is like, okay, like who's above and who's below, and it'll keep trying to reform those hierarchies. But that's the beauty of like the malleability of the mind, is that even though the ego may be sort of dense at one point, you can still have that power and that use your intention to come from a place of compassion and a place of selflessness, as opposed to just sticking to that survivalist mentality.
Yeah. So right here, I just want to invite us to take a deep breath for ourselves. It's good catching up with an old friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I want to, ask for a deeper check-in. And as you're sitting in this land in Massachusetts and on the precipice of the new book Lighter being birthed into the world, what's really alive for you? What's really present in your world?
Um, what's alive for me right now is honestly, it's been my relationship with my wife lately, because it we're really functioning as a team these
Mm,
days, and we've been we've had so many ups and downs, and it's been years of doing this work together, trying to bring harmony into our relationship through the medium of our separate internal work. And lately she's just been just critical to like everything that I've been doing,
mm,
sort of just holding uh everything together, that and it comes down to like, she's my manager, so
okay.
we literally work together.
Yeah, you
and
do.
and I just feel like that where we've gotten to a deeper flow state where we can, work together, get things done, and then come 5 o'clock, we just like set all that stuff aside, and then it's just the two of us, in our loving relationship, resting together, enjoying life together, and being able to exist in relationship with each other and have that relationship hold many faces, right? Like,
Yeah.
being a team like that and having that versatility, it just means the world to me. I think it's like the most important thing to me in my life is, yeah, my relationship with her.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. It's your closest and deepest relationship, and it deserves your attention. It deserves
Yeah.
the service work, and not only the individual work, but the work that's can only be done together. So I'll check in, give you an update on the home front as well.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I welcomed in my third son, Johan Moon Jackson, into the
Oh my
world
goodness.
back in January. So I have three sons now.
Wow.
And yeah, and with Hannah, so I have a 7-month old, 2.5-year old, and a 7-year old, soon to be 8. And parenting brings up all the shadows.
Right.
It really, really does. And in terms of humbling ourselves, like I'm changing poopy diapers and getting thrown up on. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's nothing more humbling.
Yeah. That's the deep work right there.
That's the deep. But on the real, like in relationship, it can become challenging.
Yeah.
It can become overwhelming because
Hmm.
there's so much to tend to. And Hannah, bless her heart, she's actually the one that brought me a teaching, which is criticism is a relationship killer. And so we're not working together in that way, we're working together as mother and father,
Right.
holding our home together. But we try to point that out, or to name it when we
Yeah.
find ourselves being overly critical, because that's
Cool.
for
Yeah.
us, and in our relationship, that is a piece that can be a real killer. And so in parenting, it's especially important. I'm just like speaking to myself now. It's especially important that I don't become critical of her parenting, or of my son spilling something, or of whatever it is, and to really catch myself. So she's the perfect teacher and reflector for me to hold that space. So I resonate with that, and it's going great, man. Like, having kids
Beautiful.
is the
That's beautiful.
best. Like, in the stage I am in my life, having kids, having
Yeah.
family, being home. I've been doing some traveling with Sacred Sons, but being home and just
Yeah.
playing and making food and being goofy, this is what's got my heart right now.
How long have you two been together?
Oh, it was 2016, 5 years.
Wow. That's beautiful. Man, that's so powerful. So and I think, just to like sort of piggyback what you're saying, I think that's why this moment between my wife and I has been so like pristine and clear. It just feels like this is like a memorable moment in our lives. It's because we're really, thinking about having a child soon. Um,
Mm,
and we don't know what the timeline is, right? Like I have no idea when that'll pop up, but we think relatively soon. Um, and it's funny, thinking about how our lives may change. And we've been together, like Sarah and I have been together for 15 years. Like we got
yeah.
together really young. And we just have this deep bond. And the other day we were talking and we're like, we've been hanging out for 15 years.
Yeah.
But it feels like, we both felt like it's time to, be open to a change. And like we don't know what it's going to be like, like in the act of trying to have kids, like we don't know if there's going to be some difficulty. We don't know if
Right.
it's,
Right.
even going to be possible. Like we have some friends who it's not possible for them to have kids. And we've seen it happen very easily for people. We've seen other people really struggle with it.
Yeah.
So now that we're sort of entering into this phase where we're like open to a new friend coming in and being part of our, we call it our cult of two. Um, there's
I
only two
love that.
members. Yeah, but increasing it, and like having a new, yeah, just a new friend, a new roommate, a new person to love. Um, we'll see, we'll see how things align and how the pieces fall. Yeah.
It's like you don't know how it is, and at the same time you do. It's just like everything else. Except it's going to be like the most love you've ever felt. But what I
Mm.
mean by it's just like everything else, it's like with more light comes more shadow. Like, as the
Yeah.
more you expand into the light, the greater the possibility for the ego, for the shadow to also expand.
Hmm.
But I think, and I implore my brothers and people who are in committed relationships, who have the means and stability, bring those children through. This
Yeah.
earth, this earth needs children with conscious parents. It needs the life and the newness that children bring. And in terms of the fear, you know, what's on the other side of that fear, as you know, anytime you're
Yeah.
pushing outside of your comfort
Yeah.
zone, what lies beyond that is just the greatest gift in this life. We are human beings, and if anything, we are on mission to procreate. And
That's beautiful.
if it's not the calling for someone, I totally respect it, right?
Of course,
And
of course, yeah.
I'm calling you in, bro. I can't wait till you become a father.
I'm excited about it because I feel like cultivating selflessness, like of course like we want to have a kid. So there's some like it's something that we want to bring in. But then after that, it to me, like, I have nieces and nephews and I've um seen how it goes close. Like
Hmm.
I see how it affects, my brother and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law and everybody who's kind of going through it. Like it is tough. Like it seems really difficult. Even when it goes good, it's still tough. Like, or when it,
Absolutely.
and I've seen a lot of different versions of how it can go in terms of rearing a
So
child.
I wanted
Yeah.
to say this. A lot of people have that, like, oh man, it looks chaotic, it looks like a mess. And it is. It
Yeah.
it fully is. But maybe what you don't see is nighttime. is when
Yeah.
we're putting them to bed, when we're getting out of the bathtub, reading a book, and your son, like Holland, he's 2.5. He went like this to me for the first time the other night. Daddy, I love you. I don't know where he learned it. Somebody's been doing it, but he just went right before bed. Daddy,
Yeah.
I love you. And then my heart explodes. The endorphins are rushing. I'm just like,
Yeah.
go, you know.
You got me.
And for like all the mess that's made, it's those moments that often go unseen in parenting.
Hmm.
Those beautiful moments of connection, while acknowledging that it's also the hardest thing ever. But um, you know, everyone's experience is truly their own. Right.
Right.
So
Right. And I think that's something that I'm very open to walking into because it's like, yeah, that learning that selflessness and then being able to just like create a very generative environment that helps love like flow freely. It just sounds beautiful.
yeah, yeah, man. I was looking at one of your quotes here. I'm going to bring one through if you're okay with it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, this is from the new book Lighter. There is no shortage of people who you will find physically beautiful, but finding someone who matches the maturity you are looking for, the dedication to grow, the humor that brings you comfort, and someone who just feels right in your arms and life is incredibly unique. That's
Yeah.
Hannah for me. That's
Yeah.
Hannah for me. I specifically resonate with, you know why I love your work? Because it's so sentimental. And it really causes me to contemplate, like when I'm reading this, who is that?
Right.
What emotions does that bring up? But that's Hannah for me, and it's specifically around the dedication to grow and the humor. What
I
brought that
love
forward
that.
for
I
you?
love that. What brought it forward for me was, I think, growing older.
Mm.
Now that I'm 34 years old now, um, just sort of the time that I've spent, it makes me see how beauty is really abundant and especially physical beauty, right? It's dependent on youthfulness. That's
Mm.
how, a lot of society has sort of categorized and equated the two. And when you look around, there's beautiful people everywhere. There's no shortage of them. They're just, they're everywhere. And beauty is also sort of dependent on, your own conditioning and your own preferences. But beauty is incredibly fleeting, right? It's this thing that, especially when it comes to the beauty of youth, like goodness, there could not be something that sort of, you know, arises and passes faster.
Yeah.
Um, so then that's when you need to like really do that maturing work and find that depth, that sort of that deeper connection of like, what is it that I want in my daily life out of a connection? And I love that you're talking about the humor and like I feel like my wife is the funniest person I know. Like she's hilarious. Or
Dude,
she
I used to tell Hannah, it's like I'd be like, Hannah, like don't tell too many jokes in front of my friends. Like I'm embarrassed how much I laugh at, at like how much you can actually make me laugh. But
and it's fun.
what's important for me in there is like, yeah, beauty is fleeting, but
Right.
attraction is something that's like, there's a physical primal element to it.
Hmm.
There's a smell associated with it.
Hmm.
There's a taste, and there's more to really being like coming into contact with your attraction for someone. And that attraction
Totally.
encompasses so much more than the physical beauty, which
Absolutely.
is a part of it as well. But um, it's
And I think
definitely.
I think that's where that attraction, right? That becomes based on something that's much more long lasting, right? That ability to be humorous, that ability to just like be able to like flow with your own vibe. Like that's one of the things I love the most about my wife Sarah is like she just has her own vibe, and you're either with it or you're not with it. She does not care. She just flows with herself and lives the way she wants to live. And it's so attractive to me, that she is a person that just yeah, she sort of, how can I say this? She thrives in solitude. Like she needs very little. So the fact that she allows me to be around her, it's like an honor because she doesn't need many people.
Yeah. So check this. When the baby does come, that
Yeah.
all changes because then someone's
Hmm.
attached to you for the next 3 years very closely. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of impact that bringing in children brings. But it also creates like this expansion, the heart expansion, the love, the capacity you have to hold space, because you're holding space for something that's completely irrational.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's funny too is like the thought of, children coming in and how that changes my relationship to meditation because
Mm,
I spend a lot of time meditating, and every time I schedule out any new year that arises, right? Like even 2023, like I have my meditation schedule totally planned out. Like I know when I'm going to do my 45-day silent meditation course.
wow.
I know when I'm going to other courses to serve, to sit, and I'm going to spend a lot of time next year sort of meditating, but sort of realizing how I've spent the last 10 years just putting a lot of time into retreats. So I actually did a rough calculation the other day of how much time have I spent in retreats. And altogether, it's like more than a year. Like I've spent more than a year of my
Wow.
life in retreats, not continuously, but like 30-day retreat here, 45-day retreat here, and the multiple sort of 10-day retreats that I've done. They add up to like a little bit over a year. And
Wow.
I've realized that I've, definitely needed that work and I've definitely, gained tremendous benefit from that. But thinking, okay, a child's coming in and all of that's going to have to slow down. I'm not just going to be able to disappear for 45 days, and so realizing and being okay with that and being like, I feel like I'm in a good place and I'm in a good place to give. And I've
Right.
been giving to myself for such a long time. So it's interesting, seeing how that relationship with meditation will change until the child's older. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a script flip where it doesn't become about selfishness or selflessness, but there's something down the middle around service.
Yes.
Being of
Yeah.
service to your partner, being of
Yeah.
service to your life, your relationships, your family, your work. It becomes this service where you're not, I mean, in my situation, I've been blessed with really working on my passion here with Sacred Sons and
Right.
having my family, being raised as incorporated within it. All too often, people do tend to go into the selflessness and lose themselves and become
Hmm. Hmm.
a shell of maybe who they thought they would become.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that becomes a story of parenting, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
It
Right.
really doesn't. It's a mindset, I believe.
Hmm. I think that's really important because you don't want to go into any extremes, right? Like you definitely want to, I think that cultivating selflessness is really important because if it's done right, it'll actually allow you a lot more freedom. Like you'll be much more capable of letting go. You'll much more be able to embrace the movement of change. But at the same time, if you don't nourish yourself, if you don't take care of yourself, then you're gonna at some point just fall flat. So it all has to be done with balance. And something that's coming to mind, and I'm really curious because I love Sacred Sons, and I've like my relationship with Bear runs deep.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm curious, like what have been some of the challenges for you all with this, sort of arc that's happening now with this, I would call it exponential growth of Sacred Son.
Mm. So many challenges. For me, the biggest kind of opportunity,
Hmm.
I don't look at them as challenges, look at them as opportunities, is balancing the polarity of having a business and a brotherhood.
Hmm.
I mean, it's really comes down to that. When as this growth is happening, and I really see it as expansion. We're not on some kick to like a corporation to grow year after year, but we are expanding around the world, bringing our offerings around the world, sending our facilitators out, doing
Right.
the things really, and really like really honing in on the work, right? But
Hmm.
at the same time, now there's money involved. Now some facilitators get paid this, now some get paid that. Now the projections grow larger with that perception of growth and following and those things. And so what we had to do, though, we started with a triad, myself, Albert, and Jason at the center. Neil is now a co-founder. He came on relatively early in the process, but we do the work together. And at the end of last year, we went out, like you're speaking of retreats, we did our own retreat. And we went out, we had a woman facilitate us, and we really just cleared the things between us. And I can tell you this, like between Albert and I, we had stuff coming up, and it was really like allowing those withholds in those things in our relationship to be spoken, to make space to listen to each other. That's the root of, that's the core of kind of like our success, is that we have never abandoned the core relationships within this brotherhood. And so having outside support, doing our own internal work, and then coming together and saying, hey man, like I have to clear this thing between you and I, like really keeping the brotherhood strong at the core is allowing that expansion to happen. And there was a real moment where I didn't know if we were going to make it. We don't really talk about this stuff so often, so it's cool that you asked. But there was a moment where between Albert and I, it's like, are you gonna bail from this thing, or am I gonna bail from this thing, or what's happening here? And so to take the time to get really clear on it, and focusing on the core relationship and the family, so that we can confidently expand into the world, because we know our core is taken care of.
Absolutely. One, thank you so much for sharing so candidly, because I'm just, I'm really curious, because I've seen you guys from the nascent. Like I've seen when it all started coming together, when it was an idea, seen it, to the level it's reached now. And in my mind, whenever I have conversations with Albert, and sometimes, he'll tell me about, sort of different opportunities, different challenges that are coming up. One thing that I try to remind him of is like, even if there's friction amongst the core, it needs to be like harmonized for the sake of seeing a strong group of men that want to do good in the world be able to figure out their stuff between each other, so that it doesn't break and people don't need to go their separate ways. Because I've seen a lot of beautiful groups break, and something that I think we should kind of all be aware of is that when power increases, it functions like a magnet and it pulls up the roughest parts of the ego. So, and that's something that, can be counteracted with personal healing work, with cultivating those aspects of compassion, cultivating self-awareness, cultivating your ability to sort of simultaneously live your truth and let go, so that there's harmony in the group. And I love hearing that you guys, were able to set time aside, go, be truly honest with each other, and figure out, how to just reactivate the harmony. Because I think that's something in all relationships. It's like you have to, reactivate the harmony over and over again so that you can continue moving forward.
Yeah. And many co-founders or partners that are in business together, they actually may not have the tools to process and to go through it. And we even have the tools, but we still needed that outside kind of facilitation, that outside witness for someone with no skin in the game, so to speak, to really speak to us. And so we're practicing what we're preaching. We're inviting men into these containers to do the same thing for their situations that are arising in their lives.
I love that.
To get really honest. And so we're like, we got to do that too.
Because we all need good role models. So seeing like a group of friends that has taken on a massive project together and figure out like, okay, we're going to work on our shit and we're going to figure this out together. Like, that's so beautiful, man. And it's rare. So thank you.
I mention this often in our core team calls. It's in the relationships. Even like, we're promoting and putting on a lot of events, a lot of retreats, the relationships with the land where we're going to be having our events, the relationships with with the brothers in the brotherhood, relationships with our chefs who are cooking the food for our events. These type of things, it all matters.
Yeah.
And really, the more that we give our attention to the relationships, the other stuff kind of falls into place. Not that we don't have to do the work and do the scheduling. And yes, we have Excel spreadsheets, and yes, we're really operating, putting
Right.
in those structures. And the more attention we give to the relationships, the more we tend to thrive.
That's really beautiful. That's really powerful. I think it's something that the world needs, because I like, one thing that I try to talk about often is that the healing modality that works for me is not necessarily going to be the healing modality that works for you.
Yeah.
So being able to literally create a space for collective healing, for group healing, and to see individuals flourish within that space, I think it's something really powerful, necessary, and yeah, I'm rooting for you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And we have so much support, and that sentiment. It's the same kind of calling or vision that I had, and that Albert had, and Jay had, in our own ways. But it's like, I need this. I actually need brotherhood in my life.
Yeah.
I've had it in multiple different ways throughout my life. And after my first son Noah was born, I quickly noticed that it was missing.
Hmm.
I found myself isolated in fatherhood those first 2 years, questioning, wondering, like, oh my God, am I alone in feeling the things that I'm feeling, the overwhelm that's there in oftentimes in that first year. And so I really needed this brotherhood. I needed the connection with other people, just to be honest, just to talk about the things that were coming up, because our partners are not necessarily the ones who can hold it for us.
Oh,
And
totally.
especially the
Yeah.
mothers of our children don't really need to be worrying about the plights of the father. There's a role for brotherhood to hold that space.
I think there's a lot of legitimacy to that, because one person, right, is not going to be able to like fill all of you. And that's why there's the power of friendship and family, because we're not
Yes.
going to put the weight of everything that we need in the world onto one relationship, because then the relationship will just break, right? We need to be able to divide, and not divide, but just seek fulfillment in multiple relationships. And
Yeah.
I find the same thing too, man. I mean, my best friends, lately I think I've probably spent the most time with my oldest friend, Lennon, who I met when I was 10 years old. We were 10 years old when we met. We were in fourth grade together. And we've seen each other like literally move through different generations. Like we've grown
Yeah.
up together. And that's a relationship that I just feel like it's the most grounding one. And then on the other end, like I have a sort of newer best friend, my boy Rodrigo, who he moved out from Mexico a few years ago, and he's new to the US, has been here for like 3 or 4 years. And this bond that I have with him, because he's such a serious meditator,
Mm.
like he talk, I was talking about how I put in a year of time. I think this guy's put in probably like 2 years of time,
Yeah.
of like in meditation retreats, and his his commitment to the path of liberation, and the way that we're able to like talk to each other, and really deeply understand what each other is going through, because like the meditation path, it's a path of deconditioning. So
Mm.
when every time you sit down and you meditate, like deep stuff is happening, because all the old things that you've been carrying in your mind are burning away. That's the point of the practice, right? It's purification. And that means shedding. And that means
Shedding.
that it's going to be tough sometimes. But I think him more so than other people, like he really sees me and I really see him. And uh, that bond is something that, I just deeply cherish.
Yeah. Yeah. The bonds of friendship, the relationships, family, familial or otherwise, you know, that's what this life is. Our ability to connect, inspire, to uh, realign, to whatever it is, like those relationships. It's just this is what life is, man. And so, in the beginning of this show, I said, let go of the past, connect with the present, and expand the future. I want to look at, and this is on the cover of the new book, Lighter. I want to go through each one of these.
Sure.
Because I love to give our brothers who are listening, brothers and sisters who are listening, some tools.
Yeah.
How do we let go of the past?
Letting go of the past, I think, requires a modality. I think you need to sort of ground yourself in a particular practice, and that could be something like the offerings of sacred sons, or there are different forms of meditation where you are, sort of lighter forms of meditation, or forms of mindfulness, or serious forms of meditations like, silent 10-day courses. And there's also different forms of therapy. So to be able to tell you, like, this is how you let go, like number step 1, step 2, step 3, that would be it wouldn't do justice to the different modalities that are out there, because they're quite different. But one thing that I feel like is common for letting go is that if you really want to let go of the past, you need to deeply, deeply accept the present. Like the healing that you're looking for, it's in the embrace of the present moment. And you're not, you don't need to like cognitively go back to the past and reimagine all the sort of trauma points that have happened to you.
Yeah.
You're feeling sadness now. You're feeling anxiety now. So how are you able to embrace that? If you can embrace it, then a lot of the pressure that is on the timeline of your past history will be relieved.
I feel like there's a special mechanism here for me is when I learn from it, when I learn the lesson, and maybe that learning of the lesson is a feeling, maybe it's an emotion, maybe it's deep grief that allows me to fully digest it. But when I learn from the past, that's what allows me to let it go. And I learn from the past through the modalities, by sitting in sweat lodge, by putting myself in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah,
But
but
it's
doesn't that learning happen in the present moment though? Even when you're
learning happens in the present.
but it does, in the moment that you're having that
Yes.
realization about the
Yes.
past, it's happening right now. And it's like boom, it clicks.
And
And
it's
it's
the
funny,
only thing happening. It's the
right?
only thing happening. Yeah.
Right. And that's something that I think is important to understand. Like you're acquiring of wisdom, you're sort of blossoming in wisdom that happens in the present moment. The same thing with joy, the same thing with love. Like you can have
Yeah.
memories of these things, but you're going to feel them most powerfully in the present moment.
And how do we connect to the present moment? For someone who's, they say when you're too much in the past, that's depression. When you're too much in the future, that's anxiety. How do
Yeah.
we connect to the present?
I think it needs to be intentionally cultivated, right? Because
Yeah.
the mind is like we were talking about before, the mind, its sort of primary objective is survival. That's why you have an ego. That's why fear and anxiety are so prevalent. That's why we're constantly sort of like analyzing different scenarios so that we keep ourselves safe. But if you want to connect with the present, you'll have to intentionally accept what's happening inside of you and outside of you to be able to feel, whatever emotion is arising, and accepting it and being with it, or just teaching yourself, that I can be, in this moment that's right in front of me. I need to allow myself to put more energy into my presence so that I'm
Yeah.
not scrolling on the phone, so that I'm not just swimming in my thoughts, but I'm actually listening to the person that's in front of me. I'm actually selflessly trying to take in their perspective so that I can appreciate it and then give them my own perspective. But I think that takes a lot of intentional practice, similar to going to the gym. Like you're not just going to run a marathon,
Yes.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah. I love that analogy of practice, because
Hmm.
oftentimes we're practicing doing something that is not serving us.
Like, yeah,
Including scrolling,
yeah,
including
exactly.
including
I'm
binging.
nasty at scrolling, right? Like you practice that so much.
Dude, I got my thumb game is on point, bro.
Yeah, my
And so
thumb's so
we have to
strong.
we have to practice, like, yeah, put that phone down and just sit in silence, or sit
Yeah.
and, for me, one of the things that brings me into presence is curiosity.
Nice,
And
nice.
so whether that whether that's I live up on a mountain outside of San Diego. We have wild turkeys in our yard as
Nice.
it's getting cooler in the morning. So I get curious about those turkeys. Just look at
Yeah.
those, watch them. I walked out there with Holland yesterday morning, and of course he wants to chase them and grab them, and who knows what he intends to do with them. But it's just like just being in that present moment, and not like to control it or to stop anything from happening. Just getting curious about it and asking questions, like for me in the mind, really brings me into the present awareness of not only the space I'm in, but of the kind of emotional space that I'm in as well.
I love that because I find nature to be so grounding. I think that's one of the, I love that my wife and I came out here to Western Massachusetts, and, we live on land now, and it is so precious to be able to see it go through the seasons, to go on walks and see the slow changes that are happening, or to especially tending our garden. And that just, you have to be there with the plant, like while you're weeding or watering or whatever, or when you're harvesting, whatever it is, it requires so much delicate attention. Or, we've been growing, we have six sort of little bushes of tulsi, of holy basil that we're growing for tea that we're drying out. But when we take from the plant, you have to be really careful to not take more than a third of the plant, because then you might hurt it and kill it. So
Mm.
being able to like be there with the plant as you're cutting and as you're taking from it, and just being, giving it that gentleness, I feel like that's something that I love, that I get that opportunity to practice that, and hopefully, bring that into other parts of my life, that
Yeah.
gentleness.
Yeah. Getting into nature to come into presence. And so, with that, once we're present, how do we expand our future?
I think it comes with a lot of healing, like there are, when the mind is heavy, right? When the mind
Mm.
carries a lot of baggage, a lot of heavy conditioning from the past, um, the mind becomes very limited, because every time you're interacting with what's around you, what you're actually doing is perceiving everything through your sort of understanding and emotions of the past. And that makes it really hard to be able to observe anything objectively, because you're just constantly filtering through whatever it was that you knew before. And if you really want to expand your future and see more opportunities and have more options, then it really requires you digging deep and finding a modality that challenges you but doesn't overwhelm you, so it can help you relieve yourself of all those mental burdens that you've been holding on to, whether they were conscious or unconscious. Um, and then once you find that you're relieving yourself and alleviating all that density in your mind, then there's a natural spring of creativity that comes forward, where you're able to, see all these old problems and old situations and bring forward all these new skillful actions, so you can just deal with them in new ways.
Yeah. Lighter. It's by the time this airs, the book will be out. Pre-orders are available right now, but I guess in with your rise to stardom into the third book, and knowing that your wife and you work so closely, how do you maintain a sense of being lighter like the perception that I have is there's probably so much more for you guys to carry?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think the main point that helps with everything, with every facet of my life, my relationship with my, friends, family, the work that I do, um, all of it is sort of balanced on this platform of meditation. So I meditate 2 hours a day, 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening. And those 2 hours function like pillars that hold my life up together.
Wow.
And so that's like the main avenue that, keeps me sort of grounded and connected to the truth of impermanence. Because yes, like things are great now. And a lot of, I've been really fortunate. with the books doing well, people finding them useful, people connecting with them. But I don't know how long that will last. Like I can continue doing my work and putting out, you know, um, different sort of viewpoints that I think are valuable and that people would want to reflect on. But if I want to be personally happy and if I want to be personally free, then I need to embrace impermanence. And that's what the meditation
Yes.
gives me is like everything's changing all the time. Everything's changing right now. And there's also going to be even bigger changes that come. So I just don't know what the future holds. So that's really the main thing. And then the other side of it is just being intentional about, spending time with my parents, with my mom and dad,
Mm.
going back to visit Ecuador periodically so I
It's
can
time
really,
for that. We're
yeah.
getting to that age where it's like, man, that becomes more and more real and more in our awareness.
Oh my goodness. Every time I'm with my parents, it feels like a treasure. I
Yeah.
try to see them like once a month at least because we don't live in the same city. But it's just so beautiful. Like I can't even, when I see my mom and dad, it's hard for me to even fathom how much they've given to me and how them sort of turning on the light of my life, how it's sort of just like I could not be more grateful that they've given me this opportunity. But
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. And that's a good meditation right there. Thank you, mom and dad, for granting me this life.
yeah,
And I feel that so much. The gratitude for this life, for being here, for that light coming on, for the soul entering this physical form.
totally. And then they've literally given you an opportunity to gain new wisdom that you
Mm,
wouldn't have had if it weren't for them coming together and finding their connection, even if it was momentary.
right.
It happened and sort of all these causes and conditions came together for you to exist. And I think it's something quite precious that is often overlooked because I know not everyone has a great relationship with their parents, of course,
Right.
but at the same time, like we're here and that's something to be grateful for.
Blessings on your journey to granting that gift to another soul.
Thank you.
Because
Thank you.
that's what this game is. It's like feel it, love it, and pass it on.
I need your support, bro. When things get tough, I'm gonna call you and be like,
I will
yo,
be
what
here.
do I
We
do?
have we on our app, we have a weekly fathers council.
Yeah?
Guys are showing up weekly. We've been doing this for 3 years now.
Oh,
Weekly fathers council. We need it. Dads, we need it. Dads, get on the Sacred Sons app.
yeah.
Um, get connected. Come into a space where you can be honest. That's a part of keeping it lighter. I want to say as the season changes from late summer to fall, as the colors are changing, this is really a cycle of letting
Yeah.
go, coming into presence, and expanding the future. And letting
Mhm.
go. So don't, for those listening out there, don't beat yourself up if you
Yeah.
find yourself back in that cycle. And if you need a better way to think about it, it's not a never ending cycle going around on the merry-go-round. It's an ascending spiral.
Yeah.
But we're letting go, we're connecting to the present, we're expanding our future, we're ascending in that spiral. And so really having the awareness of that process can just be helpful.
I think that's great. And the ascending spiral is a beautiful image because it will teach you to embrace slow victories. Like it's not about just like this big leap forward and, becoming a new person in one, exact year. Like oftentimes the victories are really slow. It's about taking one step at a time. And I think embracing that, personally for me has helped me a lot because when I see my rough points appear, and I see that, okay, there's, a lot of sort of shadow points that I need to work on, it's like, okay, like I take on this new challenge, but at the same time, I don't let it become a thing where, I'm thinking, oh, I'm moving backwards. Because the reality is like, if I were to take a step back and sort of examine who I was 10 years ago when I started this journey and who I am now, it's a whole different person. Like
Yeah.
it almost feels like two lives.
Yeah, that we live many lifetimes in one,
Yeah, definitely.
truly. All right, Diego, it's about that time for me to go pick up the boys pick up Noah from school. It's been good to see you. I want to connect more. You know, the invitation's always there. And as you're meditating, come get some physical challenges in. Come wrestle. Come push the edges of your comfort. I think it'll be good
Yeah.
for you as you expand into the next chapter of your life. With that, is there any message that you would like to leave with the brothers and sisters who are listening?
Yeah, I think if there's anything uh that you can really give to yourself, similar to a gratitude practice, where, you wake up in the morning or before you go to sleep, you think about a few things that you're grateful for. Similarly, it's really helpful to remind yourself that everything is constantly changing, even if it's just at the intellectual level, right? Just reminding yourself that what's happening now is not how it will always be.
Right.
And that doesn't need to be something that's daunting or something that causes anxiety. It can actually be something that's inspiring you to be more present with your life and with the people around you.
Beautiful. Diego, if people want to meditate alongside you, where can they do that?
um, so if you want to learn the same technique that I'm doing, you can go to dhamma.org, dhamma.org. And the teacher there is SN Goenka. He has since passed away, but there are tons of assistant teachers who help learn the technique, and it's incredibly powerful. It's hard, but I highly recommend it.
I could see this in your future. You know, young Pueblo sitting, meditating, teaching, holding the space in that way. When
Yeah,
when all when all at some point you've said what you've said and all the words have been written, there's just the silence and presence.
yeah. I think that for me now, I think I just, I need more retreats. Like I need to keep going back in there.
All right. Well, we get you in another year. Thank you for joining us once again. Thank you for your continued support and support of not only Sacred Sons but of our brother Albert
Yeah.
and for the collective. You have become a pillar within the Instagram community and all the other socials that you're a part of, and we really appreciate your words, your wisdom, and your work.
Thank you, my brother. I'm so grateful for this moment that we got to spend together. And thank you for keeping it so real. This is like a luxury of a conversation that we just had. So I'm really enjoying it. And so much love to you and the guys. And I hope we get to hang out soon.
Yeah. All right. Until then, Diego, Perez, Young Pueblo, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We're out, family. Peace.